I'm Dr. Carol Francis. I'm a clinical psychologist and a marriage and family child therapist. I want to talk to you in this moment about panic attacks. Panic attacks occur in all sorts of situations, some that are very realistic. In other words, it's normal to have a panic in those moments, and some of which that perpetuate themselves, and nothing really seems to be actually the stimulus for the panic. It's this second category that you want to be most aware of, because it means you might have gotten yourself looped into having panic responses when in fact panic wasn't really what was the warranted response. Often what happens is an anticipatory panic response. In anticipation of, oh my gosh, I'm so afraid of ever getting that panic and that scared again, an individual will be thinking and become so occupied with all the memory of those particular events in their lives that they begin to be overly conscious, overly occupied with remembering when they happened and what they felt like. And then it develops this fear, this anticipation. Oh gosh, what happens if it happens again? And that anticipation is an anticipation attack, or anticipation panic attack, or anticipatory anxiety. That's very different than when you have an anxiety that's there to signal you that you need to get out of a situation, that you're not necessarily feeling safe and maybe not safe in a particular moment. That signal anxiety is a wonderful tool. We need it. It's all part of our fight and flight ability to get away from a predator or a bad situation. Now, let's talk about for a moment those individuals that are afraid to fly. Well, we want to realize on one level, the fear of flying makes complete sense. We're really not built as a species to get off the planet and to get our feet off the gravitational field to planet Earth. And the fact that we can do it because of our wonderful inventiveness of devices that are really amazing, we can now do it, but it's antithetical to a lot of years of programming. Face it, it's only been about 100 years and less than that then we have, as commoners, been able to fly to wherever. So that fear of panic of I could die in this plane is actually kind of a reality. It's also a reality in the fact that you know that this is a life-death situation, as opposed to, well, you know, if I get bumped in my car, I'll probably survive okay, but boy, will I be upset about the dent in my car. That's not such a small thing. Now, the reason I'm saying this is not to give you an excuse to be afraid to fly, but rather a recognition and a respect for your ability to have that signal anxiety. Of course you're afraid to fly. Everybody is, because there is a fear factor there. So when you feel yourself kind of revving with that anxiety and that wonderment, realize you're not in control, and it's true, you're not. The pilot is. Realize that you're not on the planet Earth. You're right, you're in the air. Realize that there is some reasonableness to your anxiety and that you want to be respectful for that. But on the other hand, you've decided to vote on the level of probability. And the probability is that you're going to get there fine. You're going to be safe. That's the probability. It's actually a high probability that you're going to get there safe. So since it's a high probability, and we look at all the statistics that are going on, even though we hear about the bad events, the probability is that bad event is not going to happen to us, and we're going to gamble in a really good place. Now, what's interesting is that you're more likely to get cancer than you are to die in a plane, and how many people still smoke? You're more likely to have diabetes type 2, and how many people overeat and have fat and tons of sugar. So the thing is that you're taking a risk here, but your probability is actually much better in situations where you probably already do take risks. Now, what I'm doing right in this moment is I'm talking to you. I'm reasoning with you, and that's one of the responses you want to give yourself, is you want to talk to yourself in a reasonable fashion. How much you want to get there, how much it's going to be fun, looking forward to that, and also that it's going to be something that's well worth the process, and that my fear is normal. So those are the sorts of things you talk to yourself. Another thing that helps with flying anxiety is if you make sure you're programmed in a lot of distractions. Okay, some people take their medications, some people take their alcohol, which is a form of self-medicating, and what you're doing is you're lowering your anxiety level on a biochemical level, and sometimes that is what you can do, and it helps tremendously. On the other hand, in addition, people can plan on listening to a book, or plan on listening to music, or having an opportunity to see a movie they haven't seen, or getting a chance to catch up on their sleep, so that you turn it into a moment of being able to do what you don't normally get to do, because there's really not much else you're going to do while you're sitting there. So you want to be able to plan and have a lot of plethora of toys, so to speak, with you that you know you're going to enjoy, that you don't otherwise get to enjoy. That magazine you've been waiting to read, that book you wanted to hear, whatever it is that's going to build up the expectation inside of yourself that, oh, you're really looking forward to this. Now that's just an example of one type of panic attack, and all panic attacks can really kind of respond to that. One, the talking yourself through it, find the reality, and then also you can say that anxiety is normal, like getting up in front of people and feeling anxious about that. That's a normal response. It's a normal thing that often people can turn into the adrenaline that makes them a little bit more dramatic than they might be otherwise when they are kind of dull and boring. So there's a way of harnessing your anxiety as pure energy and turning it into energy that can actually assist you to be able to do other things. In addition, panic attacks are something that let you know there might be some unresolved issues going on for you. Some of the major ones that I notice are that there is a fear of dying. And the fear of death is something that we will be addressing in other videos because it's a huge part of life. And again, everyone's afraid of what might be on the other side of death, and everybody's concerned about ending this life and what will happen to the people they love and that they may not be ready to die. So the idea of death is not something that we've really metabolized very well in our culture, and actually we are more afraid to die now that more and more individuals don't necessarily believe in a God or don't really have some sort of religious foundation. Now, I'm not advocating that you artificially go out there and adopt a religious perspective just so you're not afraid of dying. I'm not big on the idea of Nietzsche when he says that religion is the opium of the people, because that indicates that there's some belief that it's nothing more than, again, another artificial drug. What I would like you, though, to do is consider what your perspective is on dying. And what would matter if you did die? Who would be harmed? And what can you do to prepare them for when you're not around? Because one day you won't be. And how about those people you really love? Well, maybe you haven't told them that you love them enough, and maybe it's time to do that. And let them know when you can, when you're alive. So what is it about death that really bothers you? And as you make that list of what really is there about death that bothers you, there may be a lot of things that you can do right now that make it so that you're better off because you've given this some thought. You don't need to be afraid of thinking about death and what it means to you. Instead, I think it might be ready for you to go ahead and prepare for it if you're having panic attacks about whether you're going to die or not. Because whether you're going to die or not, yes, you will die. We are all dying, and we all will die. So then how do you prepare for that? What I do think is also very important to do when you're thinking about anxiety associated to death or pain or things of that sort is to recognize that not only will you die, but that there have been a lot of individuals that now have after-death experiences that we've actually been able to verify that are really fascinating in today's literature. Now, because we can actually do the brainwave investigation, and we can know when an individual's body has actually died. That means their heart has stopped, their bodily systems have shut off, and there are no more brain waves that we can detect at all. And what we find out is, even though that occurs, an individual, when they are resuscitated, since we now have this field of medical resuscitation, when they're resuscitated, they have actually gone out of their body, out of their brain, out of their physiology, and had a series of experiences. And those experiences, in part, validate what the people who were around their body were doing, thinking, and saying. We now have so many narratives along this line that it's pretty well a given medical and narrative fact that people do have afterlife experiences, and when they're resuscitated, they can tell you what was occurring, even though they were not in their head or their body. I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm asking you to go investigate this whole field, because it is now taking off all over this planet. It is now in every hospital and medical training, when the medical training is open to talking about death, dying, resuscitation, and what happens after death. I think this is important for you to consider if you're having panic attacks, because it might actually be the biggest answer to your fear of dying. This is Dr. Carol Francis. A lot more we could say about panic attacks, but I hope you'll contemplate these remedies and ways of dealing with perhaps the deeper sources for why you might be afraid. Contact me if you wish. Most of all, take very good care of yourself.